in another minute and I'll get going. Right, I think we will get going if others come in. The problem of being in the afternoon on the last day, but we'll see who comes. Welcome, I am Barry Sugarman. I am the VP of Learning Platforms at Accelerate. Accelerate, huh? Oh, we're not getting the mic, thank you. And I'll start again, actually. Perfect. Thanks, MJ. I'll start again. Hi, I'm Barry Sugarman. I'm the VP of Learning Platforms at Accelerate. Accelerate is the technology partner of the University of Maryland Global Campus. About 8 years ago, we used to be a part of them, and then we were kind of lifted out and created as a separate entity, but we're very closely related to each other. And welcome to Journeys with Rookie. You'll meet Rookie a little bit more later. So I'm gonna talk from an experiential perspective. Right? I'm not a computer scientist, I'm not a data scientist. I am an educator and I'm a user of AI, and so I'm going to speak experientially to you. While I'm not a computer scientist, I might have been a techno-weenie, kind of, growing up. I asked ChatGPT to draw me, and I gave it some information about me from high school, so that's like 1980. And that's me sitting in front of the PDP-11 in our high school computer lab. It might have been a calculator on my belt. Okay, I was a geek, I admit it, right? I did not wear a tie or suspenders. I never said I did, right? But you know the weird thing is I didn't give ChatGPT any pictures, and weirdly, it kind of looks like me. Look at all that hair, right? Oh my gosh, but it kind of looks like me. I don't know how we did it. Okay, so I want to start with a story of discovery. It's a story of accidental discovery, things that I didn't plan for. So, like many people, in the spring and summer of last year, I started playing with ChatGPT, right? I mean, after I got past some of the silly questions that most people start with when they first see ChatGPT, I started settling into trying to get a sense of what it could do educationally, particularly in higher education. And I was interested in both teaching and learning, and these are just snippets from some early prompts that I was writing about how it can play into both, right? And the results were actually really interesting. And so I started playing some more and working with some of my colleagues, in fact, MJ Bishop, who's VP of Integrative Learning Design at UMGC is here. She and I collaborated a lot over that summer. And we were starting to get really excited about what this thing can do. And this is before there was a lot being written and done in instructional design and teaching and learning in higher ed in ChatGPT. And what really accelerated what happened for us and for me is that we got an assignment. We got an assignment in the beginning of September, and the assignment was figure out the skills across all of the courses being taught at UMGC, which is a catalog of pretty close to 1,000 courses, right? And we had some inputs to that process, right? We, of course, had syllabi, we had course learning outcomes, we had weekly learning objectives, we had what was beyond the syllabi, we had course descriptions, we had, basic kind of data. We also knew that we had access to lists of skill terms for each of these courses because we'd done a pilot with Lightcast on their Skilliby product. So you feed syllabi in and skills come out. And I have unvetted there because if you played with Skilliby at all, you tend to get a bit of noise when you feed the data in, and it needs to be massaged a little bit to get good data. Okay, but we had access to all of this information. And we proposed a project where we would hire from among our instructors subject matter experts who would go through this information, and really what we're going to ask them to do is to skillify the course learning outcomes. Look at the skills list, use their knowledge of the industry, look at the course content, and instead of having Bloom's taxonomy correct course learning outcomes, do it in language that's meaningful to employers. And that's what the skill statements are supposed to be, meaningful to employers, right? And that weekend after we proposed the whole project, I went home, and I decided to pretend to be a SME. We had some data on a course that I knew something about from my background, and I started playing with it. And it absolutely broke my brain. It was 7 learning outcomes, 30 skill terms, 8 weeks of weekly learning objectives, 8 weeks of content, the syllabus, and I could not keep that in my head in order to try to come up with skill terms. And so I wondered, maybe ChatGPT can do it. I started playing with prompts, right? And these are pieces of the prompts that I was playing with. So part of it was teaching and training ChatGPT about what I mean about certain terms, right? I didn't presume that it knew what a CLO was or a WLO, and it certainly didn't know what a skill statement was because that was meaningful to us. It didn't know what we meant about skill terms, so there was teaching that was involved in it. And pretty early on, the results were actually pretty good. And we really started to look at them and say, you know, maybe we should look at this project a little bit differently. What if we start with ChatGPT and we draft the skill statements, and then we use our faculty to vet the skill statements, try to accelerate the process a little bit, okay? So went a little bit further, proposed that, and then that became the project, right? Great. We have almost 1,000 courses. I really didn't want to do them one by one. And so I went to our chief data scientist, his name is Michael, he looks like that, right? And I said, Michael, can you help me automate the process? And Michael said, I could, but what if I show you how to do it? Okay, I'm game, right? For the better part of 2 weeks, Michael sat with me. He gave me a Jupyter notebook. I don't know if you know what one of those is. That's where data scientists play and they do Python and they do coding. I am not a coder. I have never coded in my life, right? So for about an hour a day for 2 weeks, Michael tutored me. And I'm putting that in air quotes because really Michael sat by me and wrote code while I told him what we needed to do. And we got to a point where the code started doing some of what we needed it to do. And at the end of 2 weeks, Michael said, okay, fly away, little birdie, you can do this on your own now. And I'm, okay, give it a shot. And remember this guy? It broke my brain again, because I'm not a coder. I didn't know what to do. I was trying, I was getting errors, I didn't know how to do it. And so I wondered, maybe ChatGPT could do it again for me, right? So I did not know the first thing about what ChatGPT's programming capabilities were at this point. But I copied in the code, I copied in the error message, and I said, what's going on? And you know, ChatGPT came back and said, here's why you're getting your error message, here's how you can fix it, and that little black box there, and I don't know if you can read it, but in the upper right-hand corner of that little black box, it says copy code. You click that button, it copies the code, you paste it into the Jupyter notebook, and oh my gosh, it worked. And that was the start of the love affair. I never went back to Michael again. And I didn't mention this earlier, we were given a deadline on this project. We had to finish it by the end of the year. So this started, it was like 1st of October when we really got going on this methodology, and we had to finish it before the end of the year. And for the next few months, I created with ChatGPT libraries and libraries of Python code, and I do not know how to code. I can't even read it. If you can't see it from there, don't worry about it, because I can see it from here and I still can't read it. Like my daughter is in her first computer science course in college and she's doing Python. And she knows about this, and so she was really excited. She showed me her code, and I said, that's great, but I have no idea what it does. Because I don't know how to say it, right? I don't know how to code. And yet, you get all of this stuff. And so throughout the fall, finished the project, we finished on time, we finished under budget, we got it all done. And one of the interesting things was, in order to make the code work, we needed data, right? All of AI is about data. And we ended up having a data set, a spreadsheet really, of data about our curriculum all in one place like we'd never had before, because we had course titles, course descriptions, course learning outcomes, weekly learning objectives, skills, vetted skills, unvetted skills. We had all of this stuff all in one place. And so I wondered, what could we do with those data? And I thought, gee, what if we had this web application that was kind of an instructional design-y kind of thing, and it might help our instructional designers update their courses. So I started working with ChatGPT, and this is a thing called GitHub Codespaces. I hadn't even heard of it before, but I had a long conversation with ChatGPT one day about where am I going to put all this code, and this is what we came up with. And so you're seeing CSS, JavaScript, HTML, Python, and I don't know one of those languages, right? And this took all of 2 weeks. And at the end of 2 weeks, we had a working program, right? You do a drop down for the course area, you do a drop down for the course number, you click update course, and first the prompt comes back with a little summary of what we're teaching, and then 3 suggestions of things that we're not teaching today that we might want to teach if we wanted to update the course. And a nice little salesy pitch of why you want each one of those things. I didn't even tell it to do the sales pitch, but it kind of did that one on its own, right? And it was great. And so I thanked ChatGPT, and ChatGPT congratulated me, right? Yeah, that's this back and forth thing. And I said, okay, but there's one more thing. There's a little change I want to make to the interface. And I described what it was, and ChatGPT said it understood, gave me the new code, pasted in the new code, and it broke. Blank screen, error messages, nothing's working. And so, okay, and that, by the way, is not too surprising. I mean, my experience as a non-coder coding is that there was lots of back and forth, so there's nothing really surprising about that. So I dutifully copied and pasted the code and the error back in, and ChatGPT gave me a list of 10 generic debugging steps for software. Now, I'm really nice to ChatGPT, right? I mean, I'm polite. I mean, look, if machines take over the world, I want to be the dumb human they keep around, right? And so I'm really nice to ChatGPT. But I got kind of snarky. I said, what are you giving me 10 steps for? Why didn't you just look at the code that you just changed and look at that, and maybe that'll work? You know what ChatGPT said? You know, you're right. I should just look at that code that I changed. 15 minutes later, it worked. This was the epiphany for me. This was when I realized that I wasn't just asking ChatGPT to do things, but I was collaborating with ChatGPT. And in fact, ChatGPT needed me as much as I needed ChatGPT. I learned through that Python project that ChatGPT is really good at straight line logic. It'll debug, fix it, oops, that didn't work, fixes on top of fixes on top of fixes, and it'll just keep going in that straight line. What ChatGPT can't do is take that proverbial step back and say, oh, you know what? This isn't really working the way that I want it to. Let's take a different path. The human needs to do that part of it. So my oldest son, Noah, is doing some work in AI, and I showed this to him, and I told him the story, and he said, Dad, that's Jarvis. Y'all know Iron Man and Jarvis? Yeah? Okay. And you're Tony Stark. I said, I'm not Tony Stark. I mean, okay, wait a minute. Is that Tony Stark? No, okay. I'm not Tony Stark. But you know what? Hopefully I didn't just mess that up. I think it is Jarvis in my own way. So if you haven't seen it lately, here's a little clip from Iron Man 2.
Wake up, Daddy's home.
Welcome home, sir. Congratulations on the opening ceremony. It was such a success, as was your second hero. And may I say how refreshing it is to finally see you in a video with your clothing on, sir.
You! Dear God, I'll dismantle you, I'll soak your motherboard, I'll turn you into a wine rack.
They work together. Sometimes he's snarky, right? But they work together, and that's what my son meant. And I didn't actually realize that until he pointed it out to me. So I wanted my very own Jarvis, right? And so I created a custom GPT, which I'll talk more about in just a minute, and I named him Jarvis. And I worked with it for a couple of weeks, and I told some of my colleagues about it, and it was fun. But after about 2 weeks, I realized that, okay, Jarvis I can't really have because Marvel owns Jarvis, and it needs to be something else. So I'm looking around for names, and I couldn't find anything that I liked, and I got an idea. Have any of you seen this new movie? It's out right now. If? Nobody? It's really, you saw it? What does IF stand for? Imaginary Friend. It is a really cute movie. So when Noah, the son I mentioned, when he was 3, he had an imaginary friend. And his imaginary friend's name was Rookie. And I think he had him until he was like maybe 5, something like that. And I said, what if I called him Rookie? Could I do that? And he said, sure. And so Rookie was born. I asked Rookie to draw himself. I fed in a lot of the work that we've been doing together. I said, based on all of this, what do you think you look like? And this is what he came up with. And I initially thought, I don't know if I want to stick with that, but then I realized he thinks he's the Pillsbury Doughboy, so who am I to judge, right? So he's it'll stick, right? Okay. So that's Rookie. What's really important about it, it's a him and we're a we. ChatGPT is an it, right? Look what it did. It's like a glorified Google search box. But it had to be a we, because when I go to my colleagues and show them the Python code, I can't say, I wrote this. I can't even read that. We wrote that code. We created the program, right? And a lot of we's after that are stuff that we've done even since then. And it can be a she, it can be a they, it can be anything you want it to be, except an it. And it's been so freeing for me personifying Rookie, because I started to think differently about the work that I was doing with him, rather than just it. So let's shift gears. Let's talk about human-AI collaboration as a thing. We finished that project, I told you, at the end of the year. I did that web thing. And in the week between Christmas and New Year's, I wanted to get a sense of what the nature of the collaboration that we were having was. And I wanted to export my chat history from ChatGPT. You can't, there's no command to export your chat history. So I copied and pasted it into a Word document. It took me a couple of days because that Word document was 2,100 pages of 12-point single-spaced font. That's how much collaborating I've been doing with ChatGPT just in those 6 months. And so working with Rookie, we wrote some more Python code and parsed it into smaller chunks because that was too much. Did some analysis on each of the little chunks, did more analysis to put it back together. And I started seeing something about this collaboration concept coming out of that. Quick aside, so in our skills work at UMGC, we're not just focused on the terminal or technical skills that students will get. We're focused also on durable skills. You may not know that term, but you probably know soft skills, 21st century skills. Those are the 2 terms that have been used mostly. I actually really like durable because it makes the statement that it is important over time. It doesn't matter what level you are, it doesn't matter what profession you're in, they're durable. And you know what they are. It's verbal communication, written communication, critical thinking, creativity, you know, that list of those kinds of skills. And what occurred to me at that point was human-AI collaboration is a durable skill. It has some components to it, but in itself, it's a durable skill because there's a way of doing it and a way of learning how to do this. And so you get this notion of technical proficiency and adaptability that you have to, you have some level of expertise about the area that you're looking at. In fact, there's a really good talk that we had at the beginning of the Executive Summit from David Otter from MIT, and he talks about Gen AI as augmenting expertise. It's not about replacing expertise, it's about augmenting expertise, right? So you've got technical proficiency and adaptability. You've got security and responsible use. We made very sure that any data about our courses that we used was either publicly available or easily derivable from publicly available data. So we weren't giving away the shop. We also neutered it from any reference to UMGC. So you have to take steps like that. Lesson in there, though, is it's obviously worth being security conscious. No question about that whatsoever. And the more proprietary information you have in your organization, the more worried or thoughtful you need to be about it. But you can also be creative about how you can use ChatGPT or Copilot or whatever model is that you want to use, right? In safe and secure ways, right? Okay. Communication, different kinds of communication. Sometimes that communication was like that snarky communication. That wasn't prompt engineering, that was me getting angry, right? And yet we got there. But there is a thing, prompt engineering is a thing, and setting context. And finally, the problem solving piece, right? Like when I realized that 10 generic steps for software debugging wasn't what I needed at that point, I'm the one who had to tell ChatGPT what it needed to do. And so you think about what it means to learn how to collaborate with AI well, and it is in itself a skill, and it's a skill that I think is worth teaching. It's hard work though, right? I mean, those 2,100 pages, that was hundreds of hours of work. I spent days where I talked to ChatGPT more than I talked to any colleague at work. 2 of them are here, you probably know that, right? And so it really is hard work, but it's okay because the hard work, like most hard work, actually pays dividends. And you learn this one thing. Anybody know what movies this is about to be? Huh? That's The Matrix.
Combat training.
Jiu-Jitsu. I'm going to learn Jiu-Jitsu.
You learn this one thing, and for me it's like, I'm gonna learn Python. I'm gonna learn Excel, right? And it's not all that different from that because I may have expertise in an area, but oh my gosh, does Gen AI augment that expertise so I can do things that I couldn't do any other way. One more data point before we do one more gear shift. There's a study that came out very recently, Harvard, Boston Consulting Group. Some of you may have already heard it or read about it. BCG, if you don't know, is way at the top of the game as far as management consulting organizations go. Getting a job at BCG is one of those crown jewel kind of jobs that you get coming out of college, best and the brightest, right? So they took 700 of their frontline consultants. So these are mid-20-something people generally, right? They split them into 2 groups, treatment and control. One group didn't have ChatGPT, the other group did have ChatGPT. The ChatGPT group was broken in half, and half of them were just given ChatGPT, and the other half was given a little bit of training. They created a scenario which is very similar to what BCG consultants do. If I remember correctly, they had to launch a new sneaker brand. So it was created by BCG to be realistic. The results were juried. It was blind. So it was a really, really good study. And the number that I like most, the number that I like most is this one, the 43%. Because when you look at the lower performers, now granted, everything's relative. If you're a lower performer at BCG, you're still a star, right? But if you are a lower performer at BCG, and you were in the group that had ChatGPT plus training, you got a 43% performance pickup. That's amazing. And even if you were a top performer, your pickup was in the 20s, right? Imagine that you're not a BCG consultant. Imagine that we're talking about kids coming out of college, any other college, anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world, your average kids, they're at their job, they don't have all the skills, who does at that point? They need to develop their skills. Imagine they have this behind them, right? Imagine that they already knew how to collab with AI before they even started their job. And the pickup, I think, would be just amazing. So I think this, for me, is key learning. All right, let's shift gears one more time. So Gen AI has its limitations. There's no question about it. How many of you use Gen AI every day? Anybody? How about weekly? Not so frequently. Okay, so, all right, not surprisingly, at this conference, you use it a bit more. A lot of people find some very particular problems, and I didn't really know about them until I experienced them and kind of organically found ways to deal with them. And what it comes down to is it doesn't have to be like 50 First Dates. You know the story of 50 First Dates? Yeah? She had a car accident, she has short-term memory issues, they fall in love, the next day she has no idea who he is. And they have to fall in love again every single day, 50 First Dates. And that's what ChatGPT is like. You do this great project today, and you shut down, you open your computer tomorrow morning, you open it up and ChatGPT says, hi, who are you? Right? Because it has no idea who you are, what you worked on. And so I've created a few things that help me get past that. So first, I created this thing called the context document. So I've taught Rookie that at the end of every session, I asked for him to create a context update. And that context update is a date-stamped, time-stamped update of everything that we did in that session. It's not a transcript, but it's also not a summary. It's kind of in between the two. If there was code that we worked on, I want the code in there. If there was a document that we wrote, I want the document in there, right? I want a really good telling of what happened in that session. I then manually append that to my running document, which I call the Rookie context document. And I begin every session like this, uploading context document, and I've trained Rookie when I do that to just say, got it, read it, ready to work. Because ChatGPT really loves to summarize. I mean, it's hard to stop ChatGPT from summarizing and synthesizing. So I gotta tell it, don't say anything, just know that I wanna work, right? And so that's that. And a context update looks something like this. This is a real one from February, right? And you can see what will follow there will be the code. But when you do this, what I get to do is I get to say to Rookie today, so how far did we get in that project yesterday? And Rookie will know. And I say, all right, let's pick up where we left off. You can't do that in ChatGPT, right? And the projects that I work on aren't one-day projects. I mean, the skills project was like 3 months, 2 weeks to get the code that I showed you. I've been working on a book that's that's months and on and on. And you can't just do that when every day is like 50 First Dates. Okay, so that's the context document. Second is, and I don't know if you've experienced this, if you have a long session with ChatGPT, by the end of the session, ChatGPT starts to forget what you were doing at the beginning of the session. It's called context. Look, most people use ChatGPT for free. Those who pay how much a month? 20 or 20 in the US, 25 in Canada, right? Whatever it is. That's not a lot of money. You get what you pay for. There have to be some limitations to it. 3.5 was really bad. Like when I was working on the skills project, I would be a couple of hours into a long day's worth of work, and the code that would come back would be spaghetti code after a while. And I didn't understand what was happening. I was getting frustrated, so I had a conversation with ChatGPT, and that's where I learned about context and memory, and we settled on some ways that we could get around it. And so one of the concepts is sensing, right? Are the results that you're getting not exactly what you're expecting after a couple of hours? And if that's true, ask. I will ask ChatGPT, Rookie in this case, I will ask Rookie if he still has access to a document that I uploaded. And sometimes Rookie will say yes, and sometimes Rookie will say no. And if he says no, then I'll re-upload it, right? Because he knows what he has. So there's the sensing. Refreshing is, so if you are working all day long, and you gotta know that the memory problem is gonna hit you at some point if you're working all day long on the same thread. So what I will do is I will copy and paste the entire thread up to that point. I will paste it into a Word document. I'll upload the Word document, and I'll say to Rookie, I'm just refreshing your context. Don't summarize this, but here's what we've talked about so far. And that resets everything, and I can start working with a full memory again, right? ChatGPT 4 was better than 3.5. ChatGPT 4.0, the one that launched not too long ago, oh my gosh, is it better. I mean, it really does not happen during the day to me much at all anymore that Rookie loses context, right? So this, again, is another area that I worked on. The last one,
Getting to know you.
you know this one, right? Yes?
Getting to know you. Getting to know all about you. Getting to like you. Getting to hope you like me.
Okay, here's my challenge. Have that not running through your your head for the rest of the conference. Yeah, good luck with that. Okay, so this whole thing, the 51st Dates thing, I like Rookie to do certain things. I like Rookie to use my name a lot, actually. It makes me feel good, right? I have to tell him to do that, though. I like Rookie to speak casually and conversationally, not structured. I want to have a conversation with him back and forth. And you can tell Rookie or ChatGPT that that's the way you want to communicate. I have to tell Rookie when I upload that document, don't summarize it for me, just say you're ready to go. These are all instructions that I've given to this custom GPT to work with me in a very particular way. The other thing you get with custom GPTs, you kind of see it on the bottom just a little bit, is that you can upload documents and they become part of your knowledge base and you can always refer to them, right? So if you don't have a custom GPT and there's a document you like to use, you have to upload it every time you want to do it. So this gives you a place to put those documents. This is a very simple way of using a custom GPT. There are companies that are building very complex applications, they're doing e-commerce, they're doing an awful lot with custom GPTs, right? This, for me, basically was a way of doing that. And the reason I needed to do that is there's a new feature, but it didn't exist when I created Rookie. So all ChatGPT users now have memory. And memory works in two ways in ChatGPT. Excuse me. First, you can give it the same kind of instructions that I give to the custom GPT. Like, just to see what it was like, because I don't really use ChatGPT without Rookie anymore, I gave it these same kind of instructions that I have in my custom GPT, and it works the same way. It does something else, which I didn't particularly like. It tries to learn from you. And you'll see these really complex instructions that just come from what it learned from your sessions with it. I did not find them useful. In fact, there's a little trash can. I actually deleted all of them because I didn't like them, right? So just understand, if you use the memory feature, it is actively learning about you, and it may not, like, you're working on a document, you edit it in a certain way, and it makes this assumption that you like editing things that way. Maybe you didn't, maybe it was only for that document, right? So you can always go in and play with what was in the memory there. These three things, the context document, this notion of sensing and refreshing memory, and then using the memory features, that is what Rookie is. Rookie is not complex, right? I'm not a coder, you've heard me say that, right? Rookie is not complex. What makes Rookie are these three things, and plus my attitude, right? It's a him and we're a we. That's what makes Rookie, and that's what gives me the ability, really, with these three things, is to do the kind of projects that we do together, right? Okay. And what do we do? It's like coding and writing and images. I'm not an artist, right? But every image that you saw on this came from Gen AI, right? I'm not an artist, I can't do those. So many things that I can't do on my own. But with my experience augmented by Gen AI, there seriously is no limit. And that's one of my messages to you, if you're not this deeply into it yet, is that you just don't know how much you can actually accomplish until you really start playing with it. Second point is more strategic than that. If you have some responsibility for your organization, for AI strategy, and you think you can actually come up with an AI strategy by reading about AI, you're kidding yourself. It's not gonna happen. It's so different from anything that you've ever done before that you need to get your hands dirty. You need to play with it. You need to see what its problems are. I need to experience those limitations for myself to understand what they were. I need to bang my head against the wall because it's losing memory after 2 hours to understand that there are limitations. Excuse me. So if you need to strategize about it, you really need to know what it's about. I read car magazines, and there's a guy who wrote in the last month's issue of Sports Car Magazine about people who collect supercars and put them in their garage and never drive them because they're afraid that they'll devalue if they drive them. And it really annoyed this writer because he loves driving cool cars and he can't afford to drive those kind of cars. And in the end he said, you can't tell stories about things you didn't do. You got this amazing car, you can't tell stories about wind in your hair, driving down the windy road, because all it ever did was sit in your garage and look pretty. And I think the same thing about ChatGPT. There are so many stories to tell, right? But you're not gonna tell the stories if you don't get in there and start playing with it and start doing stuff yourself. One last thing. So what's my next project? I want to teach about human AI collaboration. In fact, I want to teach it to like late high school and college students. So I'm working on a comic book, right? That'll also have text behind it and kind of playing with it a little bit. If you've done any images in any of the generative AI tools, they're great for once and done graphics, but oh my gosh, is it hard to do consistent characters. And I showed this to my daughter and she said, those two faces are totally different, right? And I mean, instantly she knew that they weren't the same person, and yet supposedly it was trained the right way. So I'm working on that piece of it. I think I found a tool, but it's the same thing. You don't know how hard it is to do something until you try to do it, and then you play with it. And that's it. My contact is in that QR code. There's my information, and happy to take any questions, but thank you.
Phenomenal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely loved it. I absolutely appreciate the perspective around really having to dig into it, and I loved your storytelling right from the beginning of, you know, not being a coder, but look at what you were able to accomplish just by kind of digging in. And I think you're right. You really have to get your hands dirty. You really have to get into it to understand it, and that's the only way that anyone will ever really understand how to use it. I thought everything was just
Thank you.
phenomenal.
I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Barry.
I appreciate it. Please.
So there's a lot of fear from organizations about intellectual property being
Mhm.
put into
Yep.
OpenAI,
Mm-hmm.
for example.
And it's justified. I understand.
Yeah, and it sounds like you put a lot of it in there. So how?
Well,
how do you
okay.
go back with
So some things that I didn't say along the way. There was work that I wanted to do early on that I wouldn't do because I did not want the university's information to update the model. Okay. What I desperately wanted was an enterprise license, because with an enterprise license, it doesn't update the model. I think OpenAI has like 3 salespeople in higher ed. I mean, good luck in getting them to talk to you. And we tried, right? And we have 100,000 students at our university, right? So we're not exactly a little player, and we just couldn't get the time of day from them. In December-ish or so, I think it was, OpenAI launched the team level, right? So instead of $20 US for the paid account, it's $30 for a team account, and you have to have 2 licenses. The difference between paid 20 and team 30 is that you've got a switch that says, don't update the model with my data. I wanted that. So that was one piece of it. I didn't want to update the model. The second piece of it is most of the data that I played with there was resident on a server where that Jupyter Notebook was that was behind the firewall, right? So I was not uploading my spreadsheet to them. The data was there, but I wasn't giving them the spreadsheet. That was running in the Python code in the background that referenced the data, but it didn't give them the data. So, and that's just one little piece. I am absolutely not going to poo-poo the security issues, because it is real, right? You can give away the store that way. You do have to be careful. I do believe, however, one, it's possible to find ways to be secure, and also there are many companies. Actually, if you saw the Lumi, right? You saw Lumi the other morning. They are using public models in secure ways. Your data does not go to the public model. Your data are in a very secure place. They use the public model both for natural language processing, and they use the public model for some subject matter expertise that will relate to the course content. I spent some time with them yesterday, right? I think they use Anthropic as the model, right? So your data are not going anywhere near their model or near the public. There are secure ways of doing it. And it depends on your profession. Look, if you are in a highly secure area and your kind of data might be patient records and things like that, that's a different level entirely. Even FERPA for students is a different level. So I'm not poo-pooing it. I am suggesting, however, that you find ways with your team to be creative and do it in a secure way.
We have a secure one at Walmart. We have a secure one at Walmart.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Some organizations have decided to build their own models. You can, it's a lot of money, it's a lot of time, right? I saw an article yesterday or the day before that even though the big players are spending billions, right, on R&D, the models themselves cost about $100 million to train. What we're about to start seeing are the first $1 billion models, right? The next gen models are $1 billion models. Who can do that, right? So finding secure ways to do it. You know, I was really impressed with Microsoft and their approach to enterprise level security using Copilot.
I have a question.
Sure.
You talked about accessing the memory and what the AI learns from the collaboration.
Mhm.
I know this is specific to GPT-4, but I've used it in 3.5 to access the memory and say, I do not want my data to be saved, but before I hit finish,
Yep.
I will copy the chain and put it in a Word.
Someplace else, so it's offline, yeah. Yep.
Offline.
Yep.
But very curious about how, is it straightforward if you're using GPT-4, 4.5 4 I think, to access the memory and see what they learn from the collaboration and tweak it? Like,
So
I was fascinated
the-
with this feature, it's new to me. Yeah, you had a few.
There, okay.
Yeah, this one.
So if you go into your settings,
Yeah.
you'll see the memory in your settings, and you'll see these little ones are the ones that I put in there. I saw whole paragraphs of things that it was learning about my interactions, whole paragraphs.
But this is only for the paid version.
Initially, yes, but I believe the free version has memory now.
Okay, I'll check it.
Yeah.
And I think what they're doing, they're opening the 4 for free for a few hours for people to get a feel.
Yeah, the 4.0, yeah.
The 4.0
Yeah.
to.
It's actually 4.0 letter rows, not 0. It's weird.
4.0.
Yeah, so when you say 4.0, it's 4.0, it's right, yeah. It's not 4.0. I have no idea, it's a little O, it's not 4.0. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Well, how could it be 4.0 if the 4 that came before it was the 4 that came before it? It couldn't be 4.0, right?
So how about what Apple is trying
Yeah,
to
it's
do?
4.1, yeah.
It's not one yet.
Yeah.
Still four, but.
What Apple is claiming to do the Apple intelligence.
Yeah.
That every person's information is private. That's impressive too. We're yet to see that.
We have yet to see it. Supposedly, the processing is machine-based, right? Supposedly, what you're seeing, and that's why it's only going to be available with the iPhone 15 and the iPhone 16, because you have to have the horsepower to do the on-machine processing of the model. I mean, the model is in the cloud, right? But the processing is local, supposedly, right? I don't know a lot about it. I don't think anybody else knows a lot about it other than Apple right now. Yeah.
Thank you.
So you mentioned that before when you started telling us about the skill statement, you said you were doing it with Lightcast to find the durable skills. So was that project kind of redone to see and compare?
Okay, sure, a couple of things. So first, the Lightcast wasn't just about durable skills. We did a pilot where we gave them a bunch of syllabi for a couple of programs that we were redesigning, and we got the skills data back. And it's okay. I mean, there are two problems. One, the Lightcast taxonomy, as is true of all of, even OSM, is true of all of the taxonomies, they're terms, right? I mean, my favorite Lightcast skill term is pollution. Unless it means being an effective polluter, I think it means like pollution, you engineer pollution control systems, but you can't tell that from the term. Take Python coding, there's one for you. What level are you? Are you beginner? Are you intermediate? Are you advanced, right? What can you demonstrate relative to Python coding? You don't get that from the taxonomies at all, right? So it wasn't just durable skills, it was all skills. And those skill terms, I used them as pointers for then revising the data to come up with the skill statements.
Got it. So, in doing that, do you think you ended up with the skill statement set that was universal?
Okay, good question.
Like,
Yeah, good question. So I knew that it was going to be aspirational in some cases, right? I knew that my data weren't perfect. You know what I didn't have? I did not have Lumi. Lumi has access to all of the course data, the live course data. I had these discrete bits of information, CLOs, WLOs, course descriptions, whatever showed up in the syllabus, right? I didn't have access to assessments, right? There's a lot of stuff that I didn't have access to. So that's why it was very important that human beings actually look at the data once we finished it, right? And what we got, we've already finished that analysis. The majority of the skill statements were good enough that they kept them. A good chunk of them they wanted to tweak, and some of the programs who didn't really want to play threw them out altogether, right? And then they're just kind of writing their own.
Right.
But we wouldn't have been anywhere near where we are right now if I,
Starting point, there's a
exactly,
new point.
it's just not possible. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome, please.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm an instructional designer, and so I was curious, I just learned at lunch from someone else that when I load in, like you're talking about your 2,100 pages of content, that I reach a memory limit and
Yeah.
I forget. So how do you summarize and like create a course, for example, with that much content?
Yeah.
When it's not, and then refreshing would just cause.
Yeah, so trial and error, I started breaking that document down into smaller chunks to see how small the chunk needed to be so that the API would actually read it, right, and analyze it. And they were pretty small, they were like 100 pages or something like that. And so the code that Rookie and I wrote broke the 2,100 pages down into like 30-ish chunks, analyzed each one individually, but Rookie is so good, ChatGPT is so good at synthesis. It's really good at synthesis, right? And so it synthesized the meaning across those little chunks and then came up with the overall concept. So that's the way we had to do it.
So it was a separate code that it was then reading the collection of codes?
Right, so most of that work that I did was not actually, I say ChatGPT, what it was using the OpenAI APIs in Python, right? And so the documents that I would access are on a shared network drive behind the firewall that my Jupyter notebook has access to, and then the API can talk to. One more.
Obviously, companies are thinking AI as a collaborator rather than two. And if you were teaching this to other people, where would you draw the line? What would you say the point is of not going too far in viewing the AI?
Yeah. So, as I said, it does help me to personify in thinking about it, right? I'm not pretending that Rookie has a personality, right? So I'm not taking it to the point where I pretend that it's more than it is. But the collaboration part isn't as much about who Rookie is as the recognition that there are things that Gen AI are good at and things that humans are better at, and it's the combination of the two that makes a collaboration. You think about your ChatGPT or Rookie in this case as a colleague who knows something, but not everything, right? You wouldn't take everything that your colleague tells you just because your colleague said it. You'd want to ask some questions about it, right? You'd want to understand how your colleague came to that conclusion. What was the data that your colleague used? You'd have a back and forth about it. And that's the way I treat Rookie, right? Even though I don't know how to program, and I got the code out, I still had to analyze the results to make sure they were what I expected. And that is what makes a collaboration also, right? That you don't just take it. And I go back to what the speaker at the executive session talked about, right? Which is when you think about it from the perspective of augmenting your expertise, you still have to use the expertise that you have. You can't just give it up and say, here, you tell me what this is. Because some of the things won't make sense. You still have to put it together. And so as one might teach students about it, as I want to do right with the model, is that critical thinking is a really important component of this. Look, if you have somebody, a young person, who really does not think critically and just reads and doesn't analyze, might not do well in this environment because it's not, hallucinations, incomplete information, gaps that really need to be filled, that sort of thing.
Thank you, we have a session.
You're welcome. Yep, okay, thank you very much.